Okay, so content rules. Okay, so this is me with hair. This is my introduction, because nobody believes that I had hair once, but I absolutely did. And this is obviously me with hair, looking very cute, or a bit creepy actually, but there you go. But I have to hang on to this. You know, you have to keep looking back and thinking you did have hair at once upon a time. My company is called Geeky Group. We do business development support with particular emphasis on digital media, and sales, and all that lovely revenue generating stuff. And that's basically what we do. We do it in training, coaching, it's the usual list, isn't it? Training, coaching, consultancy. We produce YouTube channels for people, and once upon a time we used to do a lot of that stuff in the live environment, but of course for the time being now a lot of it is in the online environment. Okay, so you've absolutely had enough of looking at me. I know I have, so you must have done. Okay, so a bit about my background, so you know a bit about what you're getting. I have a corporate background. I've worked for companies like Microsoft, Thomas Cook, Phones for You. I was project director at Microsoft. I was head of communications for Thomas Cook, and I was customer services director for Phones for You. The more observant of you, or those that are awake at this early time in the morning, will realize that two of those companies actually no longer exist. And I'm not taking any responsibility for that, if you don't mind me saying so. They actually went down long after I left, but I'm sure it was something to do with me leaving that they got in trouble. But of course, that's not true. So I've worked, I suppose what the point I'm making is I've worked for quite a few years in the corporate sector. So I've been in the big companies, and I've seen a lot of what goes on in the big companies. Most of you, I guess, will be small businesses or startup businesses. We'll find out that in a minute. And I've also worked a lot with those as well. But those of you that can recognize the idea of it got too painful working in the corporate sector will probably know that in the corporate sector, it can be rather restrictive. And the further you go up the tree, the more restrictive it feels it gets sometimes, particularly around politics and that kind of thing. So that was obviously something that I enjoyed it very much, but I needed to do something different. So in 2003, I actually decided that I would leave the corporate sector for the reasons I mentioned: too much politics, and I just felt restricted. I'm a creative person. I get off on doing things, achieving things. And I felt I was spending half my life trying to just deal with internal politics, which a number of you will probably be able to relate to. And when we do the introductions, perhaps you might want to share that if that's the case. So in 2003, I left, and I left with a view to saying, well, what do I do now? And I decided that I would go on a journey, to be honest. And I was always fascinated about why some companies succeeded and some companies failed, and some people succeeded and some people failed. And I was always fascinated as to why is it that people sometimes succeed, companies succeed, sometimes they fail, and so on. So I decided to go out and research it. So on that basis, I started to write to people and to contact people. This was 2003, by the way, and ask them if I could interview them about their journey. And I managed to get people to agree to that, people from sport, politics, obviously business, entertainment field. And it was one of those things that, one of those lessons, I suppose, in life where if you don't ask, you don't get. So, and it's something I believe in very strongly. So I asked these people, some of which were very high profile people, probably what you might call household names of the time. And if you asked nicely, they said yes. So having been cheeky about that, I then decided that I'd be even more cheeky and asked them if I could video those interviews. And again, once they'd sussed out, or I'd convinced them that I wasn't news of the world on an Arab sting or something, they agreed to do it. And as a result of that, I actually started an online business TV channel, possibly the first in the world, probably the first in the UK. Somebody might challenge me on that one day, which is fine. But this was 3 years before YouTube. So you can imagine those of you that are slightly more senior in years may remember that only half the country could watch any sort of video whatsoever on the internet. And we had, if you remember that time, 0.5 megabyte pipes, if you were lucky, 0.5 megabyte. And now you're getting up to 100 megabytes, 110 megabytes, and so on and so forth. So the technology, I have to say, even from my point of view, as I've watched it over the years, has just exploded on a level that's taken my breath away. And I was the person going out talking about this on a regular basis. So I started this channel. And I suppose the reason I mention it is because this is where my love affair, if you like, of content and video and audios and podcasts and everything else. This is where it all started. And I was doing this stuff before. I think the word podcast didn't even exist in those days. So even though I say it myself, it was very, very innovative. And on the back of that, then you start to get a bit known. You start to do speeches at conferences. What did you do? How did you do it? What are these people really like behind the scenes? Are they really as nice as they seem, or are they total bleeps in reality? All that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I went down. Now, I did actually identify 12 key components that were always seem to be prevalent in when people succeed or projects succeed. And if I've got time, and I don't know if I will have time, I've got a bit more time on this one because it's 3 hours as opposed to 2. This is where you all take a sharp intake of breath. There will be loo breaks, so don't worry. I will actually go through the 12 components, which you might find helpful anyway in terms of some of the stuff we talk about. And I will obviously talk a little bit about the theory, give you some examples, show you some examples. But at the same time, we will do an exercise later on. So as I say, it's people getting more involved and you starting to think about your own plans in content terms once you kind of understand what I'm talking about. So then I also started an online magazine, which was a digital magazine called Tweeting Times, which did very well. And so I suppose I got the entrepreneurial bug by this time. And this was, again, probably the first digital magazine in that it had within it video and audio material, as well as text and pictures, which, of course, for those of you that remember, the text and pictures were very prevalent back in those days. And this sort of technology is still available, and I'm still a great believer in this sort of technology. The whole online magazine thing, but obviously a lot shorter because people have got the attention span of a gnat, if you're lucky. I think we can all relate to that. Okay, so the purpose for me today is basically to provide what I call the 4 I's. It's one of these or 2 of these or 4 of these for you: information, insight, ideas, and inspiration. And that's what Geeky Group's really all about, is providing one or more of the 4 I's, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. So one of the things I always say at the start of these things is treat this session like a trip to the supermarket. And let me explain what I mean by that. With digital media, everybody on this call today will be at different stages of their understanding and activity within the digital media or digital marketing space. So on one end of the scale, there'll be people who are in startup businesses. Maybe some are pretty, technophobes who are not really sure where the on button is on the iPad, right the way through to people who will be already doing a lot of the stuff that maybe I'm talking about today and are just trying to plan to take it to a new level and develop it further and make it more interesting or more dynamic. So as you can imagine, one of the challenges of running a session like this is how do you keep things relevant? Because if you're too simplistic, the people who are already doing all sorts of different things are not getting much from it. And if you're really new and you're overly techno speak, or you're overly talking about things that are very complicated or they perceive as more complicated, then it can be a bit tricky to be all things to all people. So when you go to the supermarket, most of us, when we, again, like I said, when we could go to supermarkets, what we do is we walk around with a trolley like this fella here, and we pop in things in the basket that we want or need at that particular time, and we'll leave other things on the shelf. So in this session today, that's what I'd very much like you to do, is pop some stuff in the basket that you think is relevant or interesting or dynamic, and then leave other things on the shelf that maybe are, not relevant at this time or too complex at this time. And hopefully by the end of the session, the whole idea is that you will have ended up with a number of things in your basket that you can take away and start to do more with back in the real world. I suppose the bad news today is that after this session, it's highly unlikely you'll become an absolute wizard expert in digital media. Why? Because I think it's 10,000 hours. They reckon you have to engage with a topic to become an expert in it. So 2 or 3 hours on a webinar is unlikely to get you to that point. Some of you might be Einsteins in the making. If so, fantastic, love it. But what I'm really trying to do is, inspire you, or provide you with enough intrigue that means that it resonates with you what I'm saying. It resonates with you the suggestions that we're going to make today, and as a result, you go out and explore and find out more. Okay, because then if you do that, then you will learn more, you will identify opportunity, and you'll be able to take some of these things forward back in the real world. So as I say, it's important just to keep that in mind, that anybody might be gutted right now that they're not going to be a digital media expert, but this perhaps gets you on the track, it gets you on the trail, it gets you on the journey. And then those of you that are already doing a lot of this stuff, maybe it just motivates you to try something new, something different that maybe you've not thought of before, and everything in between. So that's kind of some background. That's a bit about me, and this is the idea of the shopping trolley. Right. At this point, we go cup of Vimto. I've got a tickly cough, and I'm pretty sure it's not COVID. Pretty sure. And we'll move on. So let's hear a little bit about from you people. So just what I'd like you to do is have a think for a second about your name, if you can't remember it, what you do, what point is your business at? Are you just in startup? Are you, have you de-employ people? Are you planning on employing people? Or maybe, and we've had people on here who are employing quite a few people, and they're just looking for different ways to communicate with their potential markets, or even internally with their staff or employees. And then if you can think of something maybe a little bit weird or different about you. We've had some really interesting ones as part of this question, some of which are probably not for repeating, but I'd prefer it if you kept it clean. But it's just interesting, something about you that maybe people might be intrigued by. And, we've had people who've lived in Peru for 10 years and all sorts of different things. If you can't think of anything, it's not the law, so don't worry. It's not absolutely necessary that you share it, but just have a little bit of a ponder as to what that might be. So just have a think about that for a second. Now, what I'll do is I'll go down and I will choose people at random from the list in order. So I'm not picking on anybody specifically. It's very much a random choice. So Peter Crisp, come on down. You're the first on my screen. So Peter, tell us a bit about your good self and what you're up to.
Okay, Peter Crisp, as you just said. I spent 40 years working in the plastics industry, starting off very technical and ending up naively in sales. But anyway, and unfortunately, last year I was working for a company selling plastic to the aircraft market for aircraft seats and and I think I did 41 flights around Europe and parts of the world. And then come COVID at the end of March, beginning of April, the whole aircraft market went into free fall. After a couple of months on furlough, I got made redundant. And then you start to ask yourself, when you're only sort of 21 plus quite a few years, what you do next. One of my old companies that I was associated with as through a distributor contacted me and asked if I fancied doing some freelance work. Wouldn't be very much, wouldn't be a lot of money, but did I fancy it? I was quite humbled to be asked. And then my dear wife said, why don't you start your own business and use your expertise? So I thought about it and decided to start a consultancy to basically offer what a full-time employee would offer to a company. But obviously at the moment, a lot of companies are letting people go. They can't afford a salesperson, let's say, but they need the business. So it's a catch-22. So I thought if I offer them a cheap, let's say, option, we'll see where it goes. So on the 1st of August, I started the business. It's called Task Plastics. It's a bit of a long-winded thing. It's the thermoplastic applications and solutions consultancy. And it started slowly and a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. I then started talking to another company that I was familiar with. And basically, I'd also set up a new LinkedIn page. I started getting lots of contacts. So I wasn't having to chase people initially, which was quite surprising. I thought it'd be a lot of hard work to find people. So I had a second company that I got involved with. And after 6 weeks of being a bit vague, we sort of signed a deal for the beginning of this month. And then on Friday, I had a Zoom meeting with a consortium of Irish aerospace companies. And they've also offered to give me, in effect, 2 weeks a month work to chase business for their consortium. So as of today, or as of Friday, I've probably got 3 big clients who are going to keep me pretty busy.
Absolutely fantastic.
What I haven't got is the experience of how to efficiently run a bit behind the content, if you will. So that's part of the reason why I've decided to join these seminars and, find out, am I doing it the right way? Because I feel I've just set off on a journey and, I'm not quite sure whether the final destination is at the moment or which road to take. Or that's me.
Very few people do, Peter. Very often I've worked with a lot of businesses over the years who have had a particular idea or a particular way of they wanted to follow, and then they end up doing really well, but nothing like what on the thing that they first started off with. Common.
Yeah. So if you want something weird, which is a bit strange, I'm vaguely ambidextrous. So that's in the sense that if you give me a cricket ball, I'll throw it with my right hand. If you give me a dart, I'll throw it with the left hand. If I play golf, I play right-handed. If I play tennis, I play left-handed. So I'm a bit of a screwed up, mixed up person, really. So
you're not on your own, Pete. Don't worry, you're not on your own. Brilliant. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that. And I think that's really, frankly, I think that's really inspiring. And you must be. And I do normally warn clients to beware that it could take quite some time to get going at all. So the fact you've done that so quickly must be very encouraging for you.
It is. I still have to pinch myself a little bit that it did stay after the first few weeks. I had no clue where it was going to go and, whether I'd be paying the mortgage by Christmas. But, so
yes, scary times.
Fingers crossed it'll continue in the right direction.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks for that. And thanks for sharing that. Appreciate that. Okay. Tim from Titch and Quackers. And yeah, I think you were on I know you were on another seminar, Tim, and it didn't actually dawn on me what I realize now, Titch and Quackers, because I remember Titch and Quackers. And this is probably a point where all the oldies go, I remember Titch and Quackers, and all the young ones go, what the hell's Titch and Quackers? So over to you, Tim. Introduce yourself.
Absolutely. It messes up the Google search anyway. So I'll be very specific.
Yeah.
Yes. So my name's Tim. I run a company called Titch and Quackers, running for about 18 months on and off, lockdown on and off, and so we're just sort of ticking along at the moment. My background is really I've been a photographer for about 30 years. I was lecturing for about 20 years of that as well. I got to a point where I needed a change, took a break, and ended up taking a course in sort of, I suppose, machinist really, so sewing and things, and found I was very good at making bags. And so what I do is I make satchels and bags. They're all handmade, all made in the UK, or mostly my living room at the moment. Um, and really, that it's all made from recycled materials, all ethically sourced, that sort of thing. Recycled plastics, recycled clothing, and all sorts. And really, I'm just trying to get to that stage. I'm trying to make things a little bit slicker. Each bag takes a long time to make, so I was just about to look at like a workshop and try to expand, but I'm just teetering at the moment, trying to see where I'm going to go direction-wise for that. So really, that's I think, as you say, last time I was on one of these things, I was making or helping my son make a model of Stonehenge, which has now been in, and it looks quite impressive. I would say so myself. And I think I suppose something different at the moment. I've been dabbling with a bit of paper making as well, so that's just on the side. Just blitzing things up and just seeing what happens with that, really. So it's not quite the weather for drying anything. So that's taken a long time.
No, of course.
It's all about me. So yes.
Anything weird?
I don't know. Apart from the Stonehenge thing,
You can't use that again because you used that last time.
I don't know. I used to do a lot of snow. I used to do a bit of snowboarding in the past, but not been able to get across the snow for a long time.
No,
mostly rolling down the hill as opposed to anything else.
yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah, absolutely me too. But it's amazing, isn't it, how many people have said already, this is what I used to do, or this is the way I used to do it, or back in the day when, and I think it just shows you to what degree everybody's being impacted. I mean, Peter there talking about the fact that he used to travel all over Europe, and I'd imagine thought nothing of it, and then all of a sudden you can't travel pretty much. So quite staggering, really. Okay, thanks for that, Tim. That's brilliant. Okay, so next we have who have we got next? I can't see what's. I don't know why it's not good. Hussein, is that, have I pronounced that right?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to check actually, because the person I'm trying to bring in, for whatever reason, it's not coming up with her name on my screen. So I'm going to have to be a little bit. I'll tell you what, I'll come back to her because she's just disappeared. So I was just about to describe her, but she's just disappeared. I don't know why it's not, her name's not appearing on my screen, because everybody else is, unless I try. Let me just try another way of doing it. Bear with me a second. See, this is where the technology lets you down. Right, yeah, it's appearing. I've got it appearing now. Shirley.
Hi.
Come on down. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
did disappear.
I couldn't see your name on the screen. Right, fantastic. Right, Shirley, very warm welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Well, I've worked in the corporate industry for the last 30 years. I worked in insurance, then I was solicitor, then I've just moved to a medical agency. 2 weeks ago, I was made redundant. So a little while ago, I had an idea about running a series of workshops, getting local startups and existing new businesses to run the workshops, and I'd facilitate that through the community centre. So I started that 2 weeks ago. So far, it's going okay. Got lots of interest and stuff like that. So really, at the very beginning, I haven't got a name yet.
Yeah. Are you at the point yet where it all feels a little bit overwhelming, or are you?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's normal too, if it helps at all. But yeah, there's a lot of people will tell you the same thing, that in those early days. And when you look at all the different boost courses as well, of course, it kind of makes you realize how much there is to know and understand in order to start in the business. I always say to people, starting a business is really, really easy. Growing it is a lot tougher. Is there anything weird or something about you that you want to share with us? Oh, she's frozen. Shirley, you're frozen. I don't know. I'll come back to you if that's okay, because you're frozen on my screen at the moment. Yeah, that's the thing with this Tinternet thing, isn't it? Oh, there she is. Sorry, Shirley, you froze there.
I'm here. It all went weird. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Something weird. I like buying houses, living in them, doing them up. So I've probably lived in about 25 houses, and it drives my husband and my daughter mad.
How long have you been in the one you're in now?
18 months already, getting a bit, itchy feet.
Itchy feet. I bet there's a lot of people actually really like that idea, to be honest.
I do.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I can understand that. Right. Thanks for that, Shirley, and thanks for sharing that. And I'm sure it must be quite a tough time and a bit anxious right now. And obviously, as we've seen already, there's quite a lot of people in the same position.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that. Yusuf. Hi, Yusuf.
Good morning, all.
Hello, mate. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good. Just to let everybody know, my name's Yusuf Musa, one of the Boost Business Advisors, joining you today, Phil. So I've been doing that for a number of years, as you know, and I've been in the business support arena for the last 20 years. So, the old business link and all that kind of thing. So we've seen a lot of businesses over the years, and good to see so many people still starting their own businesses. So hopefully it may continue. So really my role is to try and help people today who wants to start the business and develop it. So we're here to try and help providing a one-stop solution for a journey. So that's where I come from, Phil, and hopefully I recognize quite a few people there today. And if you need anything, this Boost is your main point of contact.
Do you know, Yusuf? I can't believe I recognize you now. I I'll be honest. I didn't recognize you, and yeah, I'm sure you've got that beard. I'm sure that beard's got grayer since I last saw you.
Grayer is white, mate.
Oh no, it's great to see you. Yeah, it's wonderful to see. It's been, I don't know, a couple of years perhaps since I last saw you, I guess.
That's right. It's been
Yeah. But it's fantastic to have you on, mate. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So that's why I'll join you today and just learn what I can as well at the same time.
Fantastic, wonderful. Well, it's great to have you on, and as I say, it's an absolute delight to see you again after all this time.
Yeah.
Fantastic, great. Okay, so Stephen Howard. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thank you very much indeed. Tell us about you then, about yourself.
So my name's Stephen, and I run a company called offersforlocals.com. And my background is it's not in marketing, it's not in sales. I used to work at retail, and the way I got into business is my business partner had about 25 years experience in advertising and marketing, and that's how I got into this business. And starting in 2019, and it's been going good. So what I do is I provide local businesses with a listing on our directory where we promote local offers and deals, events, videos, and with this we can link it all to social media. So let's say people want to advertise their offers and deals, they can link all their social media platforms and their website to this platform to promote on Facebook and social media. We also promote in print, so people need printing services like leaflets, business cards, or banners. We do that as well, and it's been going good. Through COVID-19 as well. It's been going hard, but we picked up. We've had a lot of business in Lancashire now to help get online and help improve their sales, and it's picking up now, and it's really good. So that's me, Stephen, from offersforlocals.com.
Thanks, Stephen. That's brilliant. And come on then, anything a bit weird about you, or some story that you've got that you're prepared to tell in public?
I love jumping out of planes, skydiving. I love it, mate. I'm doing next skydiving hopefully a few months. But I love skydiving. It's the best thing.
Bro, yeah, I don't think you'd get me up there. I'm not going to lie. Bit of a wuss, or maybe too old. Perhaps is probably more the truth of the matter.
It's scary though. It's absolutely scary. Like jumping out of planes and like the G-force coming down as well. It's good though. It's good experience.
Very exhilarating, I'm sure.
Definitely.
And has said something's cropped up, so we can see his office there, but he's just had to nip away. So I've just seen that on his message, which is fine. So we'll now go to Rebecca and partner.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Becky, and this is my not so helpful assistant, Phoebe. But I run Busy Bee Organisers, which is a business support business essentially. So it helps people who are time hungry get back some control and get things organised. So I offer virtual assistant services, customer management, email management, those kind of things, but also social media management and marketing. So obviously I'm here because there's always something to learn, and like you said, whether I need to do things differently or, you know, I'm just open to ideas and open to this. So yeah, that's me. In terms of something weird, I'm quite boring really, but in former life I was a journalist, so that's how I started my career, and I actually used to work for the BBC producing local radio. So yeah, and here I am.
So how did you leave that behind and end up with what you're doing now?
Well, I sold my soul to sales. That's what happened. So yeah, I started as a journalist and worked there on a freelance basis for 7 years. You know, just chasing the permanent contract, and then I was offered an opportunity to be an account manager for a company, and at the time I was saving to go traveling the world. So I took the opportunity, and I've never looked back really.
All right, fantastic. And yeah, I mean, that's really must be. I'm sure people are very interested in your BBC background, because a lot of people are more interested in people that have been in media, aren't they? Tend to be a bit.
Yeah, well, you either get two reactions. You say you're a journalist and you get, oh my God, or you get the intrigue. It's one or the other.
Yeah, do you get that you're not Piers Morgan, are you? Is that one of the...
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's a funny one really, but yeah, it was great. It was a great experience.
Right, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, and thanks for. She's very well. Is it a she? I can't see very clearly.
Yeah, she's tired. So yeah, so far so good, but I'm not. Watch this space.
So I guess tired is good.
Tired is good. Tired is, yeah. Hopefully she'll go to sleep soon.
Okay, wonderful. Right, thanks for that, and thanks for saying hello. Elizabeth Horn. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hello.
Is it Elizabeth or Liz? Which do you prefer?
Sorry, I was late.
No, that's okay.
Liz
Don't
is
worry,
fine.
it happens. Liz is fine. Okay, that's okay then. Right. Sorry, yeah, your internet's a little bit iffy, but strike. See what you can see if you can get through introducing yourself. I'm sorry, it's just a little bit iffy, the internet. But crack on.
Right. Yeah, no problem. I seem to come and go. I think it's a bit techy this morning. But my background is in education, which I came out of at the end of last year, and I'm looking into being able to develop and set up possibly a company relating to stained glass and the development of the sort of creative side of that, of glass paneling and what goes alongside that really. So at the moment, that's what I'm trying to do. Something weird or different for me. I'm not sure. I think I've come in half an hour too late. I've not listened to everyone's exciting things. I'm not sure. I'll have to have a think and come back.
Don't worry. I said, I don't know if you heard me say it, but I said it's not the law. You don't. It's not the law. You don't have to describe it. It was just if there happens to be something. But I mean, glass panels is quite an interesting arena, quite an interesting topic. Is that something you're very passionate about, or are you very passionate about the creative side of work and life?
I think it's the creative side, and I think it's the meaning behind it. My background's in visual literacy and how you combine words with imagery, and how and they can speak without actually any spoken word at all. So a lot of what I do is all based, even though it's a very much Victorian tradition, more about the modern and contemporary slant on that. So how you can put a meaning to it and how everything represents something in a visual language.
Right. Fantastic. Okay. That's wonderful. Thanks for that. Mohammed Shishti. Mohammed, can you hear me? Hello, mate.
Yes,
You're right.
can. I'm good, sir.
Thanks very much for joining us. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, this is just a start for me here in this webinar. I have been doing quite a lot retail work in my life. I worked in Tesco's, also worked in a French Carrefour supermarket as a retail manager, and I worked really in like in very detailed work in retail. After that, here I've worked in car industry. We were selling, doing car sales and back in 2015, 16, 17, and then Brexit started, and it really, we got hurt from there, from the sales. And then past 2 years, I have been living in Blackpool with one of my uncle. He's got a B&B. He started B&Bs back in 2011. So now he's got about 3 or 4. So it's a good growth here in Blackpool, in tourist area, as compared to living in any city and doing other jobs. So I have recently started a company to provide some management facilities to the local businesses and to do some hotel-related supplies and all that. Previously, when I've done my other businesses, I have used quite a lot Facebook as a social media to get my clients, and Google. And to be honest, I have got quite a lot 5-star rating. I mean, I really do honestly all work. But this time when I started, it's all the pandemic and the hotels closed down. That's why I contacted Boost to give me a hand. My idea also was to provide staff later on, but for the moment, I'm a little bit stuck.
Right, fantastic. Funnily enough, yeah, I've got a client actually in Blackpool. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a big regeneration project going on in Blackpool called Showtown, and they're building a museum basically of all the history of Blackpool as an entertainment centre. Okay. And I'm working with them at the moment. So so I'm familiar with the ups and downs that have been going on there a little bit more than normally I might have done. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll crack on. Lynn Jones. Hello, Lynn.
Morning, everyone. I'm not a local, as you can probably tell. I'm actually a business advisor. Just joined recently Winning Pitch. Hello, Elizabeth. Elizabeth's one of my clients, and Peter, wherever he's gone, he was too. So new to Winning Pitch, but I've been a business advisor, business coach for 20 years or maybe a bit more now, so plenty of experience. Yeah, looking forward to working with more people. Really interested to hear people's stories and where they are and what they're up to now. Something weird about me, well, I don't know about anyone else, but my internet has been kind of dipping in and out this morning. I'm going to blame all of the kids who were on half term and probably just absorbing everything. But I have, well, it's not a talent, and I don't know how good it is now. I used to be able to literally trip car alarms and flip kind of fuse things very easily. So one place I worked many years ago, I used to kind of be the first in of a morning. So I'd be turning the alarm off and putting all the lights on. In the end, they stopped me from doing it because they'd be getting call outs because the alarm wouldn't work properly, or it would be going on and all the lights trip. So that's my secret talent.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm very good at giving electric shocks, static ones as well. So and you can actually see them.
I think
That's
if
my
there was
party trick.
if there was a prize for most weird, I think you've won it so far.
Thank you.
In the nicest possible way, you understand.
That's okay. I don't know where the talent is now, because obviously I've not been going anywhere to test it recently. So it may have diminished, is all I can say.
Well, I'm thinking maybe Darren Brown needs to keep an eye over his shoulder. That's what I'm thinking. Thanks very much, Lynn. Thanks very much for that. That's fantastic. Right. Okay. We're going strong. We're still going strong. Who else have we got? Joseph Travis. Joseph, are you around? Can you speak? Or here he is. Hi, Joseph.
I for the last 10 years I've run Red Fox Pottery on, but I kind of want to push it forward a bit more. So I left my job in September that I've been working for 4 years, and yeah, I can't think of anything weird about me at the moment.
That's like I said, it's not the law. And I always put people in a spot when I ask for this, because people usually think they can come along and put on mute and turn the camera off. But you say I just have to put people on the spot a little bit. But don't worry about that. I missed the first bit of that, Joseph. Actually, if you could repeat it, it broke up quite badly.
I run Red Fox Pottery, and I have done for the last 10 years on and off. And I'm just looking at kind of expanding it a bit more, because I was just running it on the side of other projects that I've done. So, yeah.
Ah, right. Okay. So it's like what I call a side hustle, was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that a passion of yours then? Do you produce the pottery, or is it, how do you?
Yeah. I make all my own pottery and all my own glazes. I even make clay sometimes, and dig clay in Lancashire. So, I got clay from all over the UK.
So there's a good chance at the weekends we can see you with a shovel, can we, on the hills on the hills of Lancashire, digging up. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, sorry.
Don't tell anyone.
I apologise. Yeah, apologise for that. Yeah. Don't sue me if you get a call from the police this afternoon, will you? Fantastic. Well, thanks for that, mate. Appreciate that. Okay, MC, you still there?
Hi,
Yeah. Hi,
everyone.
MC.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, my name is MC, and I'm currently in the process of starting my own business. It's a beverage trading business, meaning I import and sell. My goods is scheduled to arrive hopefully end of this year or early next year. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for sharing that. That's wonderful, and obviously best of luck for it. And hopefully you'll get a few bits and pieces for your basket today, as I said earlier. Emily Lennon. Hi, Emily. Are you able to speak? Hello, Emily. Hello, Emily. I don't think Emily's talking, or she can't. Oh, there you go, Emily. Hi, Emily. I can hear you now.
Hi. Sorry about that. Doing a task working from home day today, so I've got this new laptop in front of me. But
You're multitasking.
I am. I'm trying.
Yeah, that's okay. That's the business norm. It's the new norm, so that's absolutely fine from my point of view.
I'm fine now. We're cooking on gas, all sorted. All like IT's been on it this morning, so yeah, I've got just on time for the workshop today, so I'm pleased. But I work at Beather and Struthers accountancy firm. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's been on the go for quite a few years now, well, over 100. So I am responsible for all the social media there and a lot of the other marketing outputs that we have within the department. So I'm sort of here today for the firm and on behalf of the firm, as always, but I am here for my own personal development as well. Got an English degree and a journalism degree, and my writing has been very tailored towards obviously accountancy and finance over the past few years. So I wanted to come on here today and get some ideas and just sort of get a bit more excited about content and whatnot again.
Great, fantastic. Well, I'm very much hoping that you will get more excited about content, because the reality is that the only limitation now in content terms is your imagination. So anybody that's creative gets quite excited about that idea.
Definitely.
Hopefully
And,
that's what will come across today.
yeah, and I think that's probably me in my role. I enjoy lots of different areas of it, but I am a creative and I'm very much a writer. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
Great, fantastic, wonderful. All right, thank you ever so much for everybody for sharing that. I think it's worth going through that. Please connect with each other, which would be fantastic. Right, so I think it's probably now a good time to have a quick comfort stop, because once I get going, I forget about these things, and then suddenly I realize and people are struggling a bit. So if we just have just a few minutes, if anybody wants to just nip to the loo or nip to get a quick cuppa, and then we'll crack on. So it's now 5 to 11, so 11 o'clock, and we'll crack on and start talking a little bit about this weird and wonderful thing called content. So let's just have a couple of minutes for a comfort stop, and then we'll crack on. And on that note, I'm going to include myself in that. I'll be back in a minute. What we've seen in the last few years is what I tend to refer to as the digital media revolution. And I think it very much is and has been a revolution. As I mentioned in the intro to this, back when I kind of started on this journey of content on the internet, you were very lucky if anybody could actually watch a video of more than a minute or two long. Not only that, but the actual quality of that video was usually extremely grainy, to say the least. So we have seen what in effect is a major revolution in both the way in which we communicate, the opportunities that it creates, and also the way that we do business. It's I don't think anybody would argue or disagree with that, because it's just about here, there, and everywhere, isn't it, in our lives? And you know, there's lots of discussions at the moment because it's such a wide area, isn't it? And that's one of the things that I find with these sessions is that when I started talking about digital media all those years ago, I probably would have struggled to have said, you know, included 15 minutes worth of content or insight or speeches and such like. But now it's what do you leave out? And of course, in the digital marketing space, just in that area, I find it very difficult to keep up with the new stuff that's coming along, and I'm in this game. So how the everyday folk keep up with it is absolutely unbelievable. So, for example, up until probably 3-4 months ago, I thought TikTok was a clock, something a clock did. And now all of a sudden, TikTok is here, there, and everywhere. As a slight aside, and you'll find this, I'll go off on tangents. I apologize. It's just the way I kind of do it. But as a slight aside, please don't think that TikTok is something that the kids do. If you want to get attention and you want to get engagement, at the moment, ironically, TikTok is a really good place to be, because what tends to happen, and this has happened throughout history. People don't believe me sometimes, but once upon a time, Facebook was for kids. And this is what happens, and there's a process always happens. First of all, the kids turn up, then mums and dads turn up, and then the kids disappear because mums and dads are on it, and it's not cool anymore. And it's rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So TikTok was very, very much for youngsters. It was actually called, some of you might not know this, but it was actually called Musical.ly to start with. And then they changed it to TikTok not that long ago. Well, it was bought and then they changed it to TikTok, but it was called Musical.ly. And it was basically usually, excuse me, mainly young girls, probably 10 to 15 that were on it and using it. And now it's used by many, many people. And strangely, COVID's impacted on that as well, hasn't it? You know, COVID, suddenly people were doing the dances and everything else. And so more and more adults turned up on it. So actually, TikTok is a really useful business tool. And I would encourage you to look into and figure out, number one, how to use TikTok, which is not that complicated. And then number two, think about how you might be able to use it in your business. As an example of what I'm talking about, excuse me, in the real world, a client of mine, a lady called Becky Palmer, she's an expert in colic, baby's colic, believe it or not. And she's a consultant and she's a coach. We've been setting up some podcast stuff for her and what have you. And when I said to her TikTok, it might not surprise you to know, she kind of laughed at me, basically. And lo and behold, she said, okay, I'm going to trust you. And she's done a number of small little video clips relating to baby. She's got this doll type baby. She plays around with it, puts a bit of music on it. And she said that the engagement she's had on that has been about 5 times greater than she's ever had on any other social media platform. So she's kind of acknowledged now that she's a convert. Now, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it's certainly, don't just dismiss it, I guess, is the point I'm making. One of the things I didn't say actually at the start is if you've got any questions and you want to ask them, don't feel you've got to wait till the end. You know, just any comments or questions. I know it's a little bit tricky when everybody's on on here, but if you have got comments or you've got questions, then please do, yell at any point. Don't feel you've got to wait to the end, because it just doesn't really work when you're doing something like this. People have to wait and then they forget that they had the question and they forget what they were going to ask about and such like. So any comments, or even if anybody disagrees with me, please say, as I say, I don't want people to think that, my views are 100% always true, because it is often perspective and different people might have different experiences or different views. And please feel free to share those. You don't have to keep those to yourself or keep quiet on those. Okay, so it has been said that the digital media revolution is making the industrial revolution of the 1800s look like a historical hiccup in comparison. And I think there's something in that if you look at the change that it's driving and the change that it's resulting in. So what do you think now? Because as you probably picked up now, I'm not going to just do all the talking. What do you think the digital media revolution has had? So think of it in terms of multimedia, think of it in terms of social media, in terms of Facebook, YouTube, everything that goes with it. What do you think the main impact of this revolution has been when it comes to marketing or promoting your business? No right or wrong answers.
Extensive access to much more, opening the market up much wider. You'd never touch an ounce of what you can touch now with social media.
That's right. And of course, you'll probably remember, Peter, the days where, and you kind of intimated it when you did the intro there, that you probably thought you'd be hitting the cold calling button on the phone, which is, you should never dismiss that, obviously. But at the same time, LinkedIn has given you the opportunities to connect with people on a level that would have been unheard of 7 or 8 years ago.
Absolutely. I get new people every day, and then what you find is their contacts look at the likes, and all of a sudden it snowballs. Sometimes they're not always the people you think you might want to connect with, but it's just opened up a huge marketplace. Probably too big for me at the moment, but there you go.
Don't wish for that, Peter. because if the bigger it is, the better, because then it gives you choices. You can choose who you want to engage with. And the other thing I've found over the years as well is that engaging with people is very much reliant on timing as well. I do quite a bit of sales training and sales guidance and coaching and such like. And it's quite staggering how many people give up so quickly. Back in the day, we used to talk about 9 meaningful contacts with somebody before they'll even think about buying from you. 9. And then people are saying to me, well, I tried ringing them a couple of times and I couldn't get an answer, so I've just forgotten about it. And also, I've learned as well over the years that no is not no, it's no, not now. And I think that's an important one to just jot down for yourselves, or in your mind, or even on a piece of paper. They're just saying no, not now. And the reason for that is that, of course, when you're talking to somebody or putting out your content on social media or whatever, your posts, at that particular time you're doing it, there's a very strong possibility that the people reading it, or a number of the people reading it, are not actually don't need what you offer at that point. But it only takes a board meeting a month later, 2 months later, or somebody leaves suddenly. So, it's like, oh yeah, I'm really happy with the people that we've got. Yeah, we've got some great people and they're doing some great stuff and it's fantastic. And then literally, and I've seen this happen, and some of you may be able to relate to this, and then 2 people just suddenly announce that they've been headhunted by the competition and they've gone. And suddenly there's a big hole. So suddenly somebody like, in this context we're talking about here, somebody like Peter is suddenly very valuable in March, whereas we didn't give a toss about him in January. You can see where I'm coming from on that. So it has obviously had that impact. Anything else anybody wants to share about the impact it's had on, particularly on marketing and promotion and communication?
It's hungry for content. You use up your material very quickly.
Yeah, I usually call it relentless, Tim. and it is relentless, absolutely relentless. But you're right. And the other thing, of course, is that, as kind of Peter said there, is all of a sudden your market is no longer in your back garden. Your market is global, absolutely global. Another of my clients runs an escape room operation in Ashton. And when COVID hit, you can imagine one of many, many businesses that were suddenly in the deep doo-doo. And he decided that he would take the escape room experience online. And cut a long story short, which I won't bore you with, but he did it, and he did it really well. And he learned and understood the market very, very quickly. And amazingly, 6 months later, This is from Ashton in East Manchester, for those that don't know. Small town, small place that he's got, only a couple of escape rooms. He is now up all night because America has become his market. He doesn't like it, by the way. He's over 40. He says he's absolutely too old for being up all night, and it's killing him. But what he does, it's an escape experience, or an immersive experience, they call it now. But it's in the horror and haunted genre, and the Americans just love it. And the UK a bit like, meh, you know, not really. But of course, with Halloween and everything and all that coming, and you know how big Halloween is in the States, all of a sudden he's now getting awards in America for being the top virtual escape room experience. That would have never happened in a billion years, obviously, before the internet and the global reach that it creates. So, and that's not just with product, it's about services as well as product. So anybody that's selling product, take note of international markets and international opportunities and international potential. Now, nobody knows, of course, what's going to happen with Brexit, and let's not go down that rabbit hole. But one thing that might happen is that we might get more deals, or more trading deals with countries which are further afield. You know, all of a sudden the world becomes your potential market. Now, I don't know the politics of it. Will we get the deal? Will we not get the deal? But there's a chance that, because I used to sell a product a few years back, and I had to pay import duty on it from America, and it really went into my profits, or dug into my profits. Good. So obviously global markets, you know, it is a hungry monster, as they say, the content arena. Anything else?
I'm thinking of, is it that it will also increase the competition more aggressively and faster? Because, yeah.
Yes, it has. It absolutely has. And it is fair to say that I used to talk to people about doing content. And the truth is that the number of different content options that were available were very limited a good few years ago now. They were very limited, but now, of course, there's a lot wider, more opportunity. And of course, what really does make a difference is that it's free. On the upside, though, MC, I would say that it's really made a much more level playing field for smaller businesses, in a sense, because it's those of you slightly more senior in age like me will probably remember a time where you were not going to have a prayer in hell of getting your product or service out to the market without a minimum 200 grand budget for TV and radio. And that's, of course, no longer the case. So it's created a much more level playing field. And let me give you an example. I know they can afford to put it out more often, but if you take something like Compare the Market, which we all know, the minute I say it, you're thinking Compare the Meerkat. And if you think about the simplicity of that as a campaign, in a sense, it's animation, which producing what you see there would have cost hundreds of thousands of pounds a few years ago in terms of the modeling and everything else. You can get animation done nowadays on online services like Elance and Fiverr. You can get that sort of thing done for $200, $300. So it all becomes a lot more available. And when I said at the start, or I said a few minutes ago, about the only limitation is our imagination, it's never been truer, because the cost restrictions or the cost barriers have completely folded and collapsed. I suppose you could add to that the only limitation is willingness to try new things, and then fail. And what I usually say to people is fail fast, because you will fail. So fail fast, learn from that thing that you did, learn from the mistake, and then move on to the next part of the journey, and you're learning and learning and learning all the time. And the most important piece of that is to survive whilst you're learning, actually. And a lot of that's true now, isn't it? Of the COVID era, you know, everything's about survival. And the truth is that those that survive and manage to survive, and this is a conversation I'm having with a lot of clients at the moment, you will probably be in a very strong position once we come out the other end, whatever that looks like. You're probably going to have a much better chance of taking the opportunity, because the weaker ones, the ones that are not prepared to adapt, and that's the key word I would use, and I'm going to repeat that, adapt to the market. And those that are not prepared to dig in and work hard and get creative will probably fall by the wayside. In a sense, business is the law of the jungle, and it's survival of the fittest. And again, some of you might disagree with that. Please say if you do. As I say, I've got broad enough shoulders. So you've got to basically survive. And then if you survive, then the market will, because some of your competition may have disappeared, you'll be in a lot stronger position to take advantage when the sun rises, as sometimes we call it, wherever that and however that will be. So survival is really the key factor. Okay, so is anybody familiar with this term? By the way, I'm not expecting you to be. I'm just checking whether anybody's familiar with the term.
Yeah, it seems to be how I describe the majority of my job that I do, to be honest, content marketing. Because are you asking it on like a broad spectrum? Like, it probably refers to everything that I do, really, on all platforms that I work on, and the variation of probably each platform and its demands.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, Emily. And different people might call it different things, but this is the kind of term I'm most familiar with, and I've been using for quite some years now. And I think it summarizes it. So what I'll do is I'm just going to play you a quick video that gives you an indication of what content marketing means in the context that I'm talking about it today. So just have a watch this video, and then we'll have a quick chat about it. Okay, so obviously a lot to take in there. As I say, I'm not doing my job properly if I'm not taking you outside your comfort zones. So content marketing, therefore, in simple terms, is about producing content which might be in audio, video, text, or images, or it can actually be even content in a live environment. You can produce content which is a live environment. And making it available to people to help get their attention and engagement. So if you think of it in really simple terms, if I say, I've got this microphone here. I might put an advert out that says, this microphone is absolutely fantastic. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Do you want to buy it? That's an advert. Yeah. I might say, though, if it was content marketing, is here's a microphone. Here's the 5 ways which people can get the most value out of this microphone. And then you could also do a podcast that's using this microphone, saying, here's a demonstration of this microphone in action. That's more than in that context about content. So this is the description, again, a slightly more Mensa level description, but just have a quick read through that. Okay, so is there any particular words or phrases that stand out in that description?
Yeah, I just want to ask about the free. Why particularly does it say free content? Would this not apply to content that wasn't free as well?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You can certainly sell the content, but in terms of, if you're going to sell the content, the danger then is you're putting barriers in the way. If you're making the content free, then you're removing a significant barrier in terms of the engagement.
Yes, right, understand that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like it has to be free. Blimey, you know, if you can charge for it, fantastic. And actually, there are people, some of the quite clever marketers, and you might have seen this, where they will offer something, say an ebook, and they'll sell it for $5. And it's a very small amount, but what it tells them, if somebody's prepared to pay even $5, psychologically, they are more likely to buy what you're offering, which might be more expensive.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, as I think everybody would acknowledge, remember that marketing, 99% of marketing is psychology. It's not real. It's not about what's real. That's why we are being manipulated to an inch of our lives when we walk around a supermarket and we've no idea that it's happening. So it usually is free, because then it removes that barrier to getting that engagement or that attention. Anything else jumping out for people?
Relevant. The word relevant.
Yeah. So what does that mean, Pete?
Well, I suppose in the sense that it's got to be targeted at the audience. It's no point putting out content that misses the target and is of no interest.
It's quite amazing how many people put very little effort into the targeting element. I don't know if you've noticed this.
Not specifically, but probably because I was probably targeting where I was looking.
Yeah, no, exactly. So relevance is key. So that's why when you put, and we all do it, we put content out on our personal profiles on our social media, and we all do it. But the reality is that the relevance of that content to your friends and family is going to be significantly less than if it's on your Facebook business page. That's very obvious to say, but we don't put a lot of time into what we call our target market, understanding our target market. And if we've got time, I'll do an exercise a bit later on, which kind of looks at that. Anything else jumping out? Okay, so let's look at that word attract. What do you think we mean by when we talk about attract? What might be another word for attract? Right. So yes, I'm just reading some of these comments. So driving customer action from MC. That's fine. Yeah, the word I tend to use, and you might have heard me say it a couple of times in the last 10, 15 minutes actually, is the word attention. If we haven't got the attention of our target when it comes to marketing or promoting our business or our services, then it doesn't matter how wonderful they are, because nobody's listening. So what we have to think about is how can we use our content to actually get the attention in the first place? And then think about the next point, which is engagement. So we've got the attention. What do we mean by engagement?
People getting involved, they're actually interacting.
Yeah, that's it. People getting involved, people taking notice. Anything else?
Like setting up a dialogue, then once you've managed to get people on board, you've got their attention with whatever you hook them in with, and then you set up the right channels to communicate and try and nurture that relationship, I suppose.
That's exactly right. And then, of course, the way you need to look at content is a means of keeping the attention and developing the engagement, which at the heart of it, what engagement is relationship. And there's one thing I would say to you is, and a number of you will understand this and have done it yourselves, but those of you that are earlier in the journey, relationship is massively important. Now, that might be relationship in terms of a brand. So the relationship that a customer has with you, the brand. So you'll know that, you don't know the chief executive of, let's think of a brand of boots. But at the end of the day, you have a trust in Boots, the brand. So sometimes it'll be about a trust in the brand, and sometimes it'll be about the trust in the person if you're a smaller business. Has anybody come across the know, like, trust theory, which is, again, not that complicated? But basically what it is people will not buy from you unless they know you, like you, and trust you. So if you think about that, and it's been around a while now, that saying, but it's still as true now as it's ever been. So they've either got to know, like, and trust the person if you're selling one-to-one or a smaller business, or they've got to know, like, and trust the brand. And the big difference is that brand trust takes a lot longer to build. Because if people are cynical, it'll take a lot longer to get across the brand message. Now, what you find now is that we live in an age of instant gratification. I don't know if anybody would recognizes that in terms of what they're doing or in their lives, but we see it all the time, don't we? If you don't get instant gratification, you very quickly can lose interest. So think about our kids, for example, or teenagers. How many likes have I got? It's all about instant gratification. And what I've learned in business, especially business to business, is it's about relationship. And that means you have to be patient. So what happens is somebody will put out a video or audio or a podcast, and they'll get 2 or 3 people see it, or 2 or 3 people like it. And because they didn't get 5,000 people liked it, they can't be bothered anymore. They lose interest. And I saw a really interesting statistic the other day, and it was something like 73% of YouTube channels have less than 5 videos on them. And the same for podcasts, because people don't get the massive adulation or the massive recognition very quickly, they very quickly lose interest in it. But one of the key reasons it's important to keep going is that if somebody new, like a new prospect or somebody that's interested in what you do or what you've got, if you send them to a YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel has got, say, 40 or 50 videos on it, straight away, that's going to give you credibility. That's going to build certainly some know, like, and trust, because they can see that you've got all this content on your YouTube channel. So it's not about instant gratification. It's about, cliche as it might be, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's easy to say, but when you've got lots and lots of different people clamoring to have bills paid and you've got a mortgage to pay and everything else, being patient is tricky. So it's not about not working hard, and it's not about, not understand that you've got to drive it and make it happen faster, because you do. That's just the law of the business world. However, you also have to, in the back of your mind, have an element of patience, because if you show that patience, you will tend to get a bit more of a relationship quicker. Is it fair to say that I don't think anybody would argue that if somebody comes across as desperate, it's a bit of a turn off? Would anybody disagree with that? Hello, anybody there?
Not disagreeing.
Yeah, so if it's quiet, you're happy. Okay, that's all right then. That's okay. Right. Okay. So therefore, what we've got to do is we've got to build know, like, and trust. Now, what this means is, and this is where people get really nervous. And by the way, getting into all this content marketing stuff and content engagement stuff is not easy, and it's certainly challenging. So it's not something that you can just do in 2 seconds. It's not something that you've got to put some energy into learning it. You've usually got 2 choices with this stuff. You either learn it and do it yourself, or outsource it and get somebody else to do it. And that's very similar, isn't it, with a lot of things in business. It might be your accounts. A lot of people can do their accounts if they wanted to, but they prefer not to. It's not something that particularly floats the boat, or they'd rather be doing something, that little bit different. So that's the thing, is you can either learn it yourself, or you can outsource it. So where it freaks people out is when I say this: you have to start, if you haven't already, to think of yourself as a publishing or media company. Now, understandably, that's like, what? And it's absolutely understandable. There is a theory that says that it's so important now to get into and understanding this content marketing thing, that the actual content is more important than the business, which is not literally like that, but it's almost like flipping it round to say we are a publishing and media company that sells iPads, which I know sounds strange, and it's against the natural way of thinking about it. But the point I'm really making is that without the content, then you're not going to get the attention and you're not going to get the engagement. So you have to think of yourself as a media or publishing company. And if you think about it, if you were a publishing company or a media company, if we were sitting around thinking, right, we are XYZ TV, or we are, a Vogue magazine, you have to think of content to put in your magazine or on your TV channel or in your TV program that builds that know, like, and trust. And it has to be probably a number of different things. So it has to be, well, I'll tell you what, I'll ask you the question. I don't know whether you'll want to answer it, but it doesn't matter. So if we're sitting here and we're sitting around, we're an editorial board of Vogue magazine or This Morning TV, what sorts of things are we going to be thinking about around the content? And I'll start you off. It perhaps needs to be compelling. I'll give you another one. Perhaps it needs to be entertaining. Is there anything else you can think of? What does that content need to be in order to work? So compelling, entertaining, maybe humorous.
Interactive, possibly.
Yeah, interactive. That's a good one, Tim. What else would we be thinking of? Thought-provoking. Another one.
Current issues.
Yeah, relevant and current. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So all of a sudden, the language changes because suddenly you're thinking about what your content needs to be and what it needs to look like and what it needs to sound like in order to get people's attention and keep them engaged. So that's very different than what are we going to put up as our advert? Did you see the difference? So it's not about an advert, because arguably people switch off now when it comes to adverts. Does anybody here, and there might be some, because I've been thrown by this before, actually sit there and watch every advert religiously when it's on ITV or Channel 4?
Not when it's in the middle of a good film.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on, try again.
Who's first?
Go on, just shout.
Yeah, not religiously, but I do like them because they hit the mark, they're quick, they attract your attention, and some of them are very well put together.
Do you know you said something, you said at the start, Tim, when you said something a bit strange about you? Of course, I'm only kidding you. Well,
they're short storyboarded. They're like mini films sometimes.
Yeah, they are. Some are, of course.
Limits.
I get it. But what's interesting though, if you look at what are the most, okay, let me ask you, which company has the most watched adverts, do you think, most years? And I'll give you a clue. It's around Christmas time. John Lewis. So have you ever noticed, does John Lewis ever say in that advert, come and buy our stuff?
Nope.
So that is an absolute perfect example of what I'm talking about. That is content marketing, because what they're doing is they're providing content that has an emotional connection, that gets you watching, that makes you feel an emotion. Most adverts don't really make you feel an emotion apart from irritation a lot of the time. And of course, the truth is, and the statistics are unbelievable, something like 84% of people will, when the second the adverts come on, even if they'll either whip through them with the dibbers, remotes, or if by any chance they can't, they'll put it on mute and pick up the phone. Okay, so having said all that, does that mean to say that you shouldn't do traditional advertising? Not at all. If it works for you, it works for you. This isn't about saying never advertise. Maybe do it, but if it doesn't work, fail fast. And it will depend on the product or the service or whatever. But again, the fascinating thing about the John Lewis advert is, despite the fact that costs so much money, the reality, if you look at it, that is not particularly complicated, and it isn't. Maybe the quality of the animation is pretty impressive, but you can get it done via global market for significantly less. Yeah. So the point I'm making is what's very noticeable then about the John Lewis advert? What is it tapping into? And I'm not asked that very well, but you'll see where I'm going with this in a second.
A large audience?
Yeah, that's true. I'll tell you where I'm coming from, because I asked it really badly. Story. So at the heart of content marketing, when it's its most powerful, is when it's about story. So sharing your story in your content, or story of a story of a customer, or story of a partner, or story of your business, is always much more powerful. I was fortunate enough to be able to interview Dame Anita Roddick, who started Body Shop a few years back before she passed away, and she said something then. She said, stories adhere to the mind. And she was telling us that when she started Body Shop, every single product that she produced had a story connected to it. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, and I don't know if it's still the case with Body Shop, but it certainly was back then, is that there was a story linked to every single product that they did. You know, and she said that sometimes they had creams and they had little black bits in the cream maybe from the tree that it came from, but they'd say, don't worry about the black bits, they come from the footprints of the bees. So it's like poetic license, if you like. But you can see where she was coming from. She created the stories, and the Body Shop story as a business success is out there. Somebody else got to interview was Simon Woodruff. Does anybody know who Simon Woodruff is by any chance? Well, Simon Woodruff was the founder of Yo Sushi. He was actually on Dragon's Den as well early on in the show when it started. And he used to tell stories about Yo Sushi, how it all came about, because obviously it was the conveyor belts that we all know now. But back in the day, you know, he said to us about, he went to the bank and said, right, let me just tell you what I want to do. Here's the story. I want to have ladies in short PVC mini skirts with televisions on the wall, and this conveyor belt that will be going round with coloured little dishes. They thought he was crazy, and now, of course, we think nothing of it. So the point here is think about story, and have a think about what stories do you have within your business, or even you as a person, that will help to get more attention and more engagement. And most people struggle with it because this is what goes on in their head. You know, the little voice in the head. The little voice in the head says, nobody gives a toss about what I think. Nobody gives a toss about who I am. Nobody gives a toss about my story. Who would want to listen to my story? And it's fascinating. Some of the most well-known people you can imagine have had that little voice in their head saying that to them. And we could get into some psychology there, but obviously limited time, I'm not going to. But that little voice in the head, you've got to shut it up. You've got to ignore it. It'll still be there. It'll always be there. But that little voice, we all know the little voice on our shoulders that says, should I buy that? Should I click that? Should I buy it from Amazon? And you have the two little things on the shoulders, don't you? Yeah, buy it. You only live once. Yeah, buy it. And then the other one, don't be silly. You've already got two of those already. And you've not used the second one you bought. So those little voices are going on inside our heads. So it sounds a bit glib, I admit, and I acknowledge it, but I would encourage you to do your very best. You know, one of the little things in the basket is recognize the little voice and go, oh, there's the little voice talking to me. This might be helpful, actually, because we're going to get on to, obviously, the types of content in a second. But when you're getting into video or audio, there are 5 phobias that are basically trying to give you a good kicking to stop you doing this content when it comes to video and audio and stuff. The first one is scopophobia. And scopophobia, anybody like to guess what scopophobia is? Let's get you involved in this. Okay, I'll tell you. It's the fear of the camera. You know the fear of the camera when you go, turn that thing away from me, some people will say. You know, when you're on the beach and you're like me and you tummy's sticking out. You know, it's like, turn that thing away from me. I don't want to be on. I don't want no publicity. I don't want to be on camera. Sorry, you can't say. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to be on camera. Turn that thing off. That's scopophobia. The next one is phonophobia. Anybody guess what phonophobia is?
Talking?
Yes, it is. It's fear of your own voice, hearing your own voice. So if it ain't tough enough, you've got these phobias to contend with, and the little voice in the head. And this probably is probably familiar to most of you, if not all of you. The little voice in the head that's saying, turn that camera off. You know, I've got a big nose, I've got big ears, I've got a dimple in my chin, I'm ugly, I'm this, that, and the other. I've got a great face for radio. All that stuff is going on in your head. And then to add insult to injury, the other little voice in the head is saying, actually, when I hear myself back, I sound like I'm a mouse. I sound squeaky in relative terms. And the reason for that is when we hear our voices in our own heads, the voice is traveling through our skulls, basically. So it sounds more bassy. So when we hear it played back, we feel or we perceive that we sound like Minnie Mouse in comparison. Okay, so the fear of hearing your own voice is a factor. My wife has that. My wife hates the sound of her voice, so she's definitely got phonophobia. The next one, because we're not finished yet, folks. The next one is social phobia. And social phobia is the fear of being judged. So this is the one, of course, that a lot of us can relate to with our kids, because it's the fear of being judged. As I said earlier, I only got 3 likes. I only got 2 likes. I'm being judged. Which, of course, is a real problem now, the truth is, because of trolls and all that kind of thing. So then there's your next one. So you've got the fear of you being on camera. You've got the fear of hearing your own voice. You've got the fear of being judged. The next one is glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. So, and I think, can anybody relate to that? Who's going to be honest and say that they absolutely... Or I'm going to say it, poo their pants if they have to stand up in front of an audience and speak. Pete, yeah, Peter.
Absolutely. I'll do it with one leg shaking and, you know.
Yeah.
But that's why I go the other side of the camera.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. These are all real things. These are not things I'm making up, by the way. They are real things. In fact, phonophobia is, just in case those of you that check, is the fear of loud noises as well as the fear of your own voice. But fear of public speaking, that something like 92% of people have got. And the last, but by no means least one, is technophobia. Now, come on, you can guess what that one is. Who's going to guess what technophobia is? Come on, you can do it.
It's your technology.
Yeah, it's your technology. Frightened of the technology, frightened of pressing the wrong buttons, frightened of the, if I press this button, does it work? It's frightened of, setting up Zoom and all that kind of thing. So what you've got is a lot of phobias that are going to potentially stop you producing the sorts of content that is all very, very doable. But the reason I talk about those is because it does help people sometimes, because they actually realize that these are recognized things and not just that they're stupid. So all these things are very real, and very significant numbers of people have got them, and very significant numbers of people experience them in some shape or form, or 1 or 2 or 3 of those. Is somebody trying to speak there? No? Okay. So let me kind of move that forward now in the thinking. Think about the logic of this. If 82 to 87% of people are so fearful of 1 or 2 or 3 of those phobias that results in it stopping them doing it, what do you think the opportunity is for those that can overcome them?
Huge.
One word, Peter, and that's it, isn't it?
Mm.
It's absolutely huge. Because you can, you know, I think somebody mentioned earlier about standing out, you know, and about it being very noisy. And it is flipping noisy. We all know it's very noisy. Marketing is deafening. But I would argue that because people are so fearful of doing this sort of thing, they put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off. And I do actually think that we will get to a point where in the next 3 to 5 years, I think everybody will have a podcast or a YouTube channel. Now, I'm quite happy for you to all email me in 3 years' time and say you dumb git. It clearly isn't the case. But I think there's a good chance it will get there. And I remember, because I'm old, as I said, I remember people were talking about, do you really need a website in 2003? And I would say probably 50% tops had a website in 2003. Certainly smaller businesses didn't have them. And now it's almost like, if you don't have a website, are you credible? Now, I think we will get to that point, but it'll take a lot longer because of all these fears that are in people's minds. So we'll talk a little bit about the various different options soon. But I just want you to think about that and recognize it and appreciate it. So if you want to stand out, you've still got time, because it's taking, despite the fact that technologies have been around for quite a long time, it's taking a lot longer for people to take advantage of these technologies, even though they are, in some cases, almost free to do. And I'll talk about a little bit later about podcast channels that are free to do. You know, and you've got something in your pocket now as well that's got a camera on it that's probably, you know, certainly probably got as much power in it as that, which is a Sony SV1 for your geeks, right? So you can even do it all on your phone. So the opportunities are staggering, and you can't even put the excuse in place that, oh, well, it'll cost me $5,000 to set that up. No, it won't. Now, of course, there are geeks like me who spend money on, waste lots of money and microphones and cameras, but it's because I'm geeky about that. Clues in the title of the company, I guess. So just think about that. Now, I can't force you, and I'm not going to try. I'm not going to patronize you by trying to force you to do it or overcome it. It's choices. I suppose where I'm trying to come from, and I'll leave it at this in a second. You can see I'm quite passionate about this, is that if you can overcome it, you will get advantage. And if you want advantage in your business, then arguably grab it. And at this point, this is where people throw rocks at me, normally if I'm in a physical environment, which is why it's so great to be online, so you can't throw rocks at me. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the time. Right, blimey, that's just about right. So if we have another 5 minutes break, get everybody have it. I think it's time just to get a brew. I'm going to quickly get a brew. And then when we come back, we'll start to talk about the different types of video and audio content that you can think about. And I'll show you some examples. And then you might give you some ideas, sort of things that you can do, and we'll have a chat about those. So is that okay with everybody that can hear me? Thumbs up if it's fantastic. Right. Okay, great. Right. So 12 o'clock, guys, 4 minutes, and then we'll crack on. And also, before I start the next session, I'll give you a chance to ask any questions if anything's thrown up any questions for you through what I've been waffling on about. Cool. Right, folks, catch you in 5 minutes. Right, okay. Well, I don't know anybody else, but I've got my brew, so I'm happy. Yeah, that's Pete. Pete's got his brew. God, we're so northern, aren't we? We're so northern, aren't we? Brilliant. Right, okay. Yeah, just saw something from MC, a question about story and engaging. MC, yes, happy to cover that, but I'll have to do it in a separate session or with you direct, as it were. So if you liaise with Winning Pitch and Rachel, who's on the call here, if they put you in touch with me, I'll talk you through a few story tips separately. So happy to do that. Great. Okay. Thanks for sticking with it, folks. I know it can be quite a struggle sometimes. Hopefully you're picking up a few thoughts and ideas and it's getting you thinking. And if it's getting you thinking, then that's a good place to be. Right. So what we've got is under the digital media revolution is we've got the video revolution, which we've mentioned briefly, and we've got the audio revolution. So it always used to be text. It started off with text, didn't it? And if you remember, blogging became a thing, didn't it? B with a B, blogging, which was basically a web diary in text form. Then pictures started to arrive. Some of you may recall that when pictures started to arrive, and all of a sudden, it seems strange now, doesn't it? But all of a sudden, you could put a picture of a photograph of your family on social media, and it's not that long ago where that became a possibility and became available. And then, as we say, then video started to arrive and audio started to arrive, and podcasting became a thing. And interestingly, podcasting is becoming more of a thing, it seems, every single week. It's almost like if you don't have a podcast now, why haven't you got one? It's really weird, and often driven by probably celebrity. Quite often celebrities have them, so they get mentioned on shows. So the term podcast becomes a bit more familiar. Just as a slight aside for a second, would anybody like to explain what a podcast is? Because I'm conscious some people might not be aware of the term. And by the way, it's quite okay not to know the term. Anybody like to share what a podcast is? Okay, well, a podcast is an absolute nightmare for people who've got phonophobia. Because it's obviously the sound of hearing the sound of your own voice, as we said earlier. So a podcast basically is just simply a recording of talking in audio. So there's no video. It's just one or two people talking on audio. And that is a podcast. That's it. Now, obviously, there's all sorts of different types of podcasts. And probably the most popular podcast that there is, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute, is interviews, because they're very easy to do and they're much more free flowing. But then there's other people that do podcasts where they just talk on microphone for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just sharing a thought for the day, or sharing a story that's happened to them that's very relevant to their target market. So that's what a podcast is. There's all sorts of debate about what a podcast with a video is, what you call it, and it gets all a bit messy. But some people call them video podcasts. Some people call them vodcasts. All pretty or not very great names, but that's what that is. So a video podcast, of course, is what it says on the tin. It's where you do an audio recording, but you're talking on camera at the same time. And that's kind of that's the difference. So what I want to do now is just take you through some examples, because one of the things I go on about on these sessions is I talk about show, not tell. So I can hardly kind of show and then, keep telling you everything without showing you. So here's some examples of the stuff that I've done or we've done. I use these examples not to show off on any level, but just to show you how somebody as ugly as me can appear on camera. But also just as a means of, because of things like copyright and that, if you show other people's stuff, you can get into bother if you're not careful. So first of all, then, podcast. So here's an example of a podcast. This, as you can see, because it's not socially distanced, was done just before social distancing. Here, this is a podcast that I produced for a company called NWEG, Northwest Employee Engagement Group, which some of you may have heard of actually, because it's in Lancashire, run by a great guy called Steve Smith, who's extremely passionate about employee engagement. And he asked us, would we run some podcast recordings about employee engagement? And here's three of us. This is done at Cotton Traders in Altrincham, and this is Craig, Una, and Laura and she's from Cotton Traders. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So we got together and we decided to talk about the future of work. Now, what's quite interesting about this is that the future of work, when we recorded this, we talked about the idea and the concept of working from home. We had no idea what was going to happen in the coming months when we talked about the future. And it was almost like, oh, yes, these things might take off a bit more in the future, mightn't they? And then suddenly, of course, it was everywhere and happening all over the place. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's because it's way too long, but I'll just play you. I'll literally just click on it and you'll be able to hear you'll get the idea of it. But we're talking about the future of work.
Quite as well, then people will tend to be grateful for the fact that they're in employment. They'll be more likely to stay with the company where they're situated, and it becomes much more fluid, and there is much more choice and much more variety for people when there are more opportunities in a growing economy. So I think we'll see cycles, if I'm brutally honest. I don't think it's going to be a constant improvement over the years. I think there'll be a few bumps in the road as we get there.
Yeah. What do you think, Caris?
Yeah, so I completely agree, Craig, with what you're saying around the fact that it's very much more candidate-led now. We're at 3.8% unemployment rates within the UK at the moment. And with that candidate-led, candidates are asking for more, they're wanting more, in conjunction with the fact that actually work-life balance, like there's between work and your outside life, you don't skip through the field of flowers on your way into work, put your work hat on and then just work, and at the end of the day switch hats and carry on with life. Those lines are so much more blurred now that actually it's fair that candidates and employees are expecting more and wanting more from their employer, because they're also giving more, thinking about work out.
So as you can see there, that's quite a straightforward, simple podcast. So there's three of us chatting about a topic, and it's relevant because it's the future of work, and most of people who are members of the Northwest Employee Engagement Group are actually HR people, or they're supplying into companies linked to HR. So it's very relevant. Now, what do you think the advantages are of a podcast versus a video podcast? Why do you think they've exploded to the degree that they have in the last year or two?
Probably listen to them on your phone.
Yes, exactly. They're portable, aren't they? Because you can listen to them anywhere and everywhere. Because you can listen to them on the phone. You can listen to them in the car. You can listen to them on the train when you're allowed on a train. You can listen to them when you're having a relaxing lying on the bed. You can watch them you can listen to them anywhere, and you can also multitask a lot easier, because a video needs your attention. It doesn't have to have your attention, because of course you can listen to you can obviously listen to a YouTube video without watching it. In fact, I don't know if anybody saw this, but there's a lot of concern at the moment that people are listening to YouTube videos whilst driving. And even if you're not watching the video, it's still illegal because you're tempted to. Because people are it's like a video podcast and people listen to it while they're driving, and there's issues around that. So it's these things always create new challenges, don't they, in life and society and such like. So that is something that every single person on this call, on this webinar, can do if they should so wish to dabble. The other thing is that you can record these things and just practice. They don't have to go out anywhere. You can just do them, record them, keep them. You can do 6 versions of it before you're happy. But obviously, in this particular case, you've got to be able to overcome those key areas, which in this particular case are going to be phonophobia, fear of hearing your own voice, and probably technophobia, the fear of any kind of the technology. But you can absolutely do these without massive expense or anything else. It's just the only limitation is your imagination. And again, what as I said before, you can either learn to do it yourself, play in the sandpit. That's what I always say to people. As humans, even if we're adults, we actually love to play. And if you want, even if you play at it and play around with it, and it will develop skills. It will develop your confidence over time. So worth thinking about. I never preach. I know it might sound sometimes I'm preaching, but I'm not. I'm just suggesting that you consider it for all the reasons we've been talking about. And people's engagement with you and getting to know you will be significantly more enhanced if they can hear you talking versus reading your text. On your website, think about having a video introduction, or like we're talking about now, an audio introduction. So, you can imagine text that says, "Hi, I'm Phil Croshaw. I do this, that, and the other. We are this, that, and the other." It's quite relatively dull, or can be perceived as dull, versus being able to come across and get across your personality and a little bit more get across about you and demonstrate your expertise. And it's easier to demonstrate your expertise in a dynamic way through audio. Yeah. Actually, one of the things I was going to say was, one of the things I was going to say was, as a top tip, audio is way more important in any recording that you do in terms of content for your business. Audio is always more important than video. People will forgive a grainy video. They won't forgive, or they'll turn off if their audio is poor. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but this is the amazing thing about COVID, isn't it? That now the BBC, the custodian of quality broadcasting worldwide, and now 80% of the people that have got on have got all kids running around in the background. They've got wobbly internet kicking in and out, ferrying all over the place. They've got, all sorts of things. And it's amazing the fact that they and Sky and all the rest of them now have almost made, shall we say, semi-quality video and audio more acceptable than it ever would have been a year ago, in truth. So if you've got to prioritize, or if you're thinking about doing a podcast, make sure that the audio is a decent quality. Okay. So your phone is obviously the first place to go if you want to do it. I was going to say cheaply, and it isn't cheaply at all. It's just if you want to do it simply and at a basic level, then this is perfectly adequate. And you can get apps on your phone which will record and produce audio and all the rest of it. This is something that I bought for my phone, which made a big difference to the quality of the audio. And it's this thing. Wait a minute. This thing. Get there eventually. And this is called a Rode VideoMic Me, which is basically Rode as in R-O-D-E, because that's a very well-known maker of microphone equipment. And VideoMic, as in M-I-C, obviously, not M-I-K. And this just plugs in to the phone like that. And they do one for they do the same for iPhones as well, by the way. They have an iPhone version. So it's just an Amazon search, Video Mic Me, or Rode Video Mic Me for iPhone. It'll come up. You'll find them. And these are about 45 quid, something like that. So, they're not mega cheap, but believe me, they're not particularly expensive in the great scheme of things. And these will plug into your phone, and they'll seriously improve the quality of your of your audio. So if you want to use your phone, then that's absolutely worth an investment if you're getting more serious about doing podcasts and such like. Once you start to get more into the professional level, for anybody that's slightly more geeky, then you start to get into these kind of things. And this is called a Zoom H6. And this, you can plug 4 microphones into it. You can have it in the middle of a table. So you can record different people. Journalists use this. The possibility Becky might know about this, because I can remember Becky might know about these or something similar, because journalists use them. So that's an H6, but you get more. It's getting more expensive, but you can then go and interview people, and it literally is a case of going like interviewing people. You can actually literally point it and hello, what do you think? Do you think this? Yes, you do. And it all records actually on the device. So anyway, this isn't a big tech version of the show. So we'll just stick with that, but you get the drift. So the main message here is podcasts are a great way to get started. You don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about scopophobia. You just have to get over your phonophobia and play and practice and see where it takes you. Right. Any questions on podcasts? I must be doing an amazing job. Or have I fried your brains? It could be either. Either that, or maybe you are actually listening to another podcast while you're watching me. Just a quick chat on the messages.
Bill?
Yes.
Just in terms of podcast, is there a particular platform that you recommend is the best for uploading or streaming them, or are they much of a muchness?
No, that's a cracking question, actually. And when you go into a shoe shop and there are a million shoes to choose from, well, it's very similar to when you want to set up a podcast, because there's so many choices, people do get bamboozled by them. The one that I recommend by a country mile is something called Anchor, ANCHOR.FM. Really? Anchor.FM. And the reason I recommend it is because, wait for this, it's free. Not that I'm saying you're a bunch of cheapskates on this call or anything like that. I wouldn't dare say that. But that is the best one. And Anchor.fm, I run a couple of podcasts that I run. And the one I mentioned earlier, Colic SOS, Becky Palmer, who does Colic, she uses Anchor FM. And she was shocked. She got something like 100 listens in the first week. And she talks about colic. And I'm not saying that there's a lot of people, obviously there's a lot of people interested in colic, probably mums mainly, who are struggling with it, which it clearly is a very painful thing to have crying kids and such like. But I would say definitely, definitely Anchor.fm.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Thanks, Bill.
No, that's definitely the place to start. MC is asking, how long should the podcast be? It kind of depends. If it's 3 of you talking about a subject, it's fine for it to be 30 to 40 minutes. But it is very much about different people have different attention spans. So there's no real easy answer to it. If you're doing, if you want the I suppose what you might call the official answer, take it from, the TED Talks that some of you might have heard of. They are normally 18 minutes long. And they reckon that's a scientific time in a live environment when people are starting fidgeting in their seats. 18 minutes long. But that one this one I just played you, the Nuig podcast, was I think 40 something minutes, and the number of people that listened to the whole thing was something like 70% of people listened to the whole thing, just because it was very relevant and it was very pertinent to that particular target market. Okay, what to say at the beginning and what the best way to end is. That's from MC as well. Well, I would say that the best way to start it off is by doing an introduction. So you would record it on your phone or on a recorder like I showed you, or even on your laptop. And I always think something like, and obviously this is off the top of my head, I would say call it something so it's a show, right? So, for example, I have a YouTube channel that I've just started called Passions, and it's going into and researching people's passions and where they come from, and in some cases how people have turned careers and businesses into those passions. And I think I've got about 7 episodes up there now. I've got about another 20 to record because a lot of people have volunteered to be interviewed, which is, to be honest, it was amazing. I never dreamed there'd be so many people interested in talking about it. But to answer your question, I just say, hello, I'm Phil Croshaw, and a very warm welcome to Passions. And that's how I do it. And then I play some music, I edit a bit of music into it, and then I'll stop and then I'll say, right, okay, so on today's show, I'm delighted to be welcoming Spencer Phillips. And Spencer has got a passion that I've always been fascinated in because I've known him for years. And that passion is Spencer. And then Spencer will say it's charities for animals, blah, blah, blah. And then you go off into the interview. So in effect, the answer is to introduce it. And that can be can be very short, like, hi, I'm Phil Croshaw, very warm welcome to Passions. Or it can be, hello, I'm Phil Croshaw, a very warm welcome to the Passions podcast. In this particular episode, I'm welcoming Spencer Phillips. And Spencer Phillips I've known Spencer Phillips for 14 years, and Spencer is particularly passionate about animals. In fact, I know that he's spent all night sometimes up with cheetahs in Kent at the Cheetah Sanctuary. So you can introduce it and take inspiration and guidance basically from what you see on TV and what you hear on radio, because it's all there. But if you don't overcomplicate it, because the danger is then you get all more fearful because you've got more to remember. The great thing as well about podcast versus video is you can write it down because nobody can see you reading it. Right? So the top tip there, though, of course, is you have to pretend you're not reading it. Because if it sounds like you're reading it, the danger is it loses credibility. So you might be absolutely reading it, but just read it in a way that's quite relaxed or chatty in style. And maybe put a few ers and ums in there as well to make it more real. Okay. And then the best way to end, which is MC is asking us here what the best way to end is. And it's really quite simple. It's just about saying, thanks very much for joining me on today's Passions show. Look forward to catching the next guest next week. I'm Phil Croshaw. See you soon. So you don't have to be overly complex. But the best tip I can give you, in all honesty, is about practicing it as much as possible. It's like anything else in life. If you practice it enough, you'll get better at it. You know, when I first started doing public speaking at conferences, I was one of those people that stood in front of the mirror, God help me, and I did it a number of times, and it was painful. But every time I delivered it, I got a little bit better at it. So without stating the bleeding obvious, practice will make perfect. If you stick with it and don't get put off or get put off track because you're feeling uncomfortable or awkward when you're doing, or you hear your own voice back and you go, oh my God, I sound like Mickey Mouse, as I said earlier. Go, yeah, I sound like Mickey Mouse. But the good news is I don't, because I only sound like Mickey Mouse because inside my head, I think I sound like Barry White, if you get the drift. Okay, good. We're still in. We're still on. We're not been cut off. That's good news. Right, so the next example of video is something called vlogs. So remember earlier we talked about blogs being a thing, which were basically text diaries that were written on websites, for those of you that don't remember. Well, what's taken over from blogs now is something called vlogs. They're awful, these names, aren't they? And a vlog is where you basically talk to camera about, or share to camera, your thoughts on that day, or share what you're doing on that day for people to access your thoughts or your insights or your considerations, or like a diary, a video diary of what's going on in your life or what's going on in your business. Okay. And sometimes you can just do it as an entertainment thing just to get some attention. And other times you can do it obviously as a business vlog, or you include within your vlog some stuff that's more personal and some stuff that's more business orientated. Very common question: should you ever use personal stuff in business? So Facebook posts is a good example. I get asked a lot about, should I include on my business page, should I include something of a personal nature? My personal view is, and it's my view, is yes, because what it does is it brings you across as being more human. And people buy people still, despite the digital age, people still buy people. And as such, if they can see that there's a bit of authenticity to you, and that's another word that's worth making a note of, if they think you're authentic, they'll relate to you a lot faster, because we don't, excuse me, we don't like fake, do we? We don't like fake. In fact, we don't like fake now even more than we didn't like fake a few years ago. So authenticity is great. And of course, a great way to show your authenticity is maybe to show you in your family life or your family perspectives or friends or something fun that you're doing for a change. So I'm just trying to remember who was it that, give me a second. I've had a brainstorm. I'll find him in a minute if he's still there. He might have gone. Yeah, so there's a guy, wasn't there, talking about his wish to fly out, jump out of a plane. So if he had a camera strapped to him, then there's a good chance that he could produce that as a vlog. Even though it's personal, it's still entertaining and interesting. Okay, so this is an example of a vlog that I do and I'm doing at the moment. And this is what I call my coronavirus vlog. And this is just me pontificating on camera about the COVID situation. And I've done one of these most days actually since it started. And this one is one I did very early on in the process, which is quite interesting in itself. And I apologize in advance that you'll notice that the location I did this is a little bit inappropriate based on the fact I'm talking about the coronavirus. But I didn't really kind of realize that until a bit later on. And I'm also going to try and focus a lot more on being ready, getting ready for the sunrise, as I call it. Because there will come a time when we will be out of this. And as I said before on this vlog, when we come out of it, the people that will prosper will be those that have used the time to get ready for when we come out the other side. So they'll all have everything ready to go when we will come out the other side, which hopefully will be them less than 3 or 4 months. But of course, it'll be interesting to see, because as I said, this is the end of March, and it will just be interesting to see what the situation is and whether we are in this, or am I going to be still doing this vlog in 9 months' time? Oh, God, doesn't even bear thinking about if that's the case. And that was in March, so as you can see, it's kind of getting quite interesting. Now, I actually do this for my own benefit. It's like a diary. It always was your own diary, wasn't it? So I'm doing this really. A few people have said I'd quite like to watch it just to capture the different stages at where we were at and what your mindset was. So I may well release it at some point. But as you can see, that's what a vlog is. It's that straightforward. It's talking about what's going on in your business or in your life at any one point in time. And again, of course, if you record that on your phone, it's free. I think I did that one on this one on a what's called a GoPro Hero 7, which is a small camera. Some of you might have come across those. I think I did that on that. Really good quality little camera, and you don't look such an idiot walking around. But as you probably noticed there, that was in a graveyard, and it was a bit unfortunate, really. So maybe a bit of dark humour there. I don't know, but obviously fascinating to look back and think, my God, I was saying then, doesn't bear thinking about, and here we are, well on the way to that 9 months, and we're still in the deep doo-doo. So anyway, but hopefully you get the idea of that. Any questions on vlogs or vlogging? Straightforward? Okay, great. Now, by the way, I'm not saying everybody goes off and does all these things. These are like a menu. It's like going to the old restaurant, isn't it? And looking down the menu, down this menu, what shall I choose? Well, I think I'll do a podcast, and I think I'll do a vlog, and that you choose from the menu. If you want to do them all, do them all. And that's definitely a choice. Another good way of doing vlogs is maybe if you're a customer. Sorry, if you've got, you're walking around a customer site, if they're okay with it, you could walk around and say, I'm here at my customer. So you could say something like, I'm here at my customer's factory in Preston. They've allowed me to have a quick look round and see how they're coping with COVID. What you're doing there is you're saying to people, this is my customer. But you're not saying, you're not just saying this is my customer. You're saying here's some interesting content linked to my customer. So it's subtle, but it's showing that you're working with that company, which is a good message for credibility, because you want people to see that you're working with other companies that are like you're trying to get into your business, or that you are working with bigger companies. You might want to show that you're working with bigger companies. And that's a good way of doing it. And I've done a few of those as well. As a slight aside, it might look, when you see these and you hear these, it might look like I'm sort of majorly confident in doing all this stuff. I am fairly confident, but mainly because I've been doing this quite a long time. But I'm still nervous. Even after all these years of doing it, I don't just pick up the phone and go, yeah. I can assure you I'm still nervous, and I'm still thinking, God, look at the size of my ears. Blimey, that big bump on my nose there is pretty horrendous, isn't it? It's all going on. But what I've learned is, and this is what I was trying to say earlier, what I've learned is, oh, there's the little voice. I recognize that. Shut up. And then I crack on with it. And the reason I do it is the simple, what I said earlier, is because I know that by doing this stuff, there's a lot of people not doing it because of all those fears. So I know I can stand out more by overcoming the fear. It's the classic feel the fear and do it anyway. I think it was Susan Jeffers, wasn't it? Great book, by the way. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Do it anyway. Great book. So I know that it's worth the pain of anxiety and the pain of embarrassment and the pain of, because we all have this thing in our heads about we're not good enough, or has anybody heard of imposter syndrome? More popular now than it's ever been. And imposter syndrome is that whole thing about we don't feel we're good enough. We feel like we're an imposter. We don't feel we're good enough. We don't feel we're an expert enough. And I can see Peter there nodding away, which is great. So he can obviously relate to it. And it's common, Peter, for what it's worth.
Absolutely. I've been through that a number of times over the last few months, but it's just one of those things you got to keep pushing away and putting it behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things, isn't it, where we get somebody who's really pleased with the work we've done, and we play it down. I do it. Oh, you did great. That was fantastic. Really loved it. Can't believe we got it. It was really great. Delighted we did it. And I'm always, oh yeah, well, I'm glad you liked it. But yeah, that's enough now. I don't want to hear anymore, because we don't like to feel we're showing off, do we? And that's part of our British culture, actually. Because remember the stop showing off to your friends. Anybody remember that? I don't know whether they still say that nowadays, but certainly that's what parents and teachers used to say a lot when I was younger. Stop showing off to your friends. That gets in your head, that gets in your ear. Right, I'll crack on because of obviously time. So the next example is interviews. So I'm going to show you a couple of interview examples now. One from the real world and one from the online world, just to kind of give you a feel for what an interview might look like. And there's all sorts of ways of doing interviews, but these are a great place to start, as I said earlier, because you're sharing the burden of communication with somebody else. In fact, the great thing about interviews is if you're doing the interview, you're doing the least amount of talking. Yeah. So you could, who could you interview? You could interview clients. You can interview partners. You can interview suppliers. You can interview people from your, like I said, at the moment, I'm doing this passions channel. So I'm interviewing people who've got a passion. And I'm looking for their story. I'm looking for their insight. So that's just my particular way of doing it. And there's lots of others. So I'm going to show you short clips, obviously, because of time constraints, but just to give you an idea or a flavor. So this is one we did for something called GM Business Connect, which is a magazine, and they wanted some podcasts. So we did some recordings of podcasts. And I got a call from the guy who owns this, Paul Mirage, lovely fella. And I got a call from him to say, I've got a great interview. Can you come and do it? Can you come and record it for us? So I said, okay, I will.
Edwina Curry, thank you very much for doing this podcast. Edwina Curry, you're writer, broadcaster, politician, celebrity speaker, and businesswoman. Please, Edwina, that's well and great. Tell me how you got here.
Well, it's about 30 years since I registered for VAT.
Right.
1989. I've been a Member of Parliament, a local councillor helping to run the City of Birmingham, and then I was a government minister. And as I think most people know, at the end of 1988, much of that came to an end with the issue of salmonella in eggs. And so I left government and thought to myself, right, let's be positive about this. Let's see what I can do. I was immediately approached to start writing books. And in fact, a literary agent said to me, you have no idea what you're worth. He said, what are you earning? And I said, £22,000 a year. That was before MPs got big salaries. And he said...
So you get the idea. So whether you're a fan of Edwina's or not, she's actually a really nice lady and very, you can see she invited us to her house. Not many people will do that. But people say, how do you get these people, reasonably well-known people? And in some case, when I did Experts Online, very well-known people. And I always answer with the same answer. I ask them nicely. And some people will say no, some people will say maybe, and some people will say yes. But it's a great way of developing content. And that's an example of a face-to-face interview. of course, which is a lot more difficult now, but is still possible, but more difficult because of obviously all the restrictions. So as a result of that, I added this one, which is another one. I mentioned Passions channel I was doing, and I'm doing a lot more of these interviews now on online because, of course, of the COVID situation. So this is a guy called Spencer Phillips. Again, I'm only going to show you a short clip, but you can get the idea. This is using a platform called StreamYard, which allows you to either record or to live stream. So if I've not freaked you out already, I'll be freaking you out in a minute because I'll be talking about live streaming. Elizabeth's smiling there. I think she's thinking, oh my God, please don't take me live. Okay, so yeah, so this is about Passions, as I mentioned earlier briefly. Spencer Phillips is a great guy, and he's very heavily involved in animal charity stuff. So I'll just give you a quick play. The great thing about StreamYard, by the way, is obviously you can do this background and you can put logos on it. They're called overlays. So it makes it feel more like a channel.
Okay. One little boy even has a life-size cutout of Sir David at home. He's that enthralled by what he's learned. And our generation learned all we know about the world from Sir David. We saw him sit with gorillas, and we saw him take on the blue planet, and we saw him go to the polar ice caps. We've learned, and you know, someone like Jacques Cousteau, who opened up the planet to us, the underwater world. And Greta reached that new generation of people, young people, and she did it in a way where she was saying, wake up, because what the mess you've made of all this is what I'm left with.
Yeah.
So I think that people did start to listen, and different generations of people started to listen. The hard thing, I think, is it rather like COVID news. If you sit and watch the news for half an hour, most people feel overwhelmed. I just don't understand. It's too much, and it's all negative. And I think that from the charity sector, what we've got to do.
Okay, so you get the gist of that. And anybody can do that. You know, anybody can do that. Again, practice. That's a recording. It's not a live stream. So you can, as I said to Spencer at the start of it, don't worry if you swear your head off. Don't worry about it. If I need to take it out, I will. I can. If you start having a coughing fit, you know, it's all editable, which is the real point. So, and a lot of this stuff is driven by a very simple reality. And that's that in any business, we need to be seen and heard to have a chance of succeeding. Again, very obvious thing to say, but worth saying. In any business, we need to be seen and heard to have any chance of succeeding. And if you can build something called your personal brand, you will get more business on the back of it if you're doing it consistently enough. And as I've said earlier, if you're patient enough. So it's not necessarily about saying, this is who we are, this is what we do you want to buy it? And you can see that that's the difference. So in that particular case, that's a channel. We're going to grow it. We've got all these people lined up for it. But the reason I'm telling you as a story is that that's just a way of Geeky Group developing a profile. I'm not saying there, book Geeky Group, deal with Geeky Group. It's just people start to see you and hear you, which makes you a little bit more familiar, which builds a little bit more know, like, and trust. And by the way, it doesn't mean it's easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, wouldn't they? Okay. So the next example I've got is, oh, sorry, any questions on interviews there? Because obviously it's a big area. It's a massive area. Straightforward. So everybody on the call will have a video interview up and running on YouTube by the end of the week. Are we agreed? Yeah, all right, okay. I'm just winding you up. Okay, so solo recordings is another. Now, what hopefully this is getting across to you is there's so many ways that you can use content. That's my message here, is there's different ways you can use content. I mean, one of the other things, for example, with all this, you can do what's called repurposing content. So you can take clips from interviews, for example, and put them on social media as a clip. So, you know, thought this answer from Spencer Phillips about XYZ was a really thought-provoking point that shows that XYZ, thought you might be interested to see it. Could be like 30 seconds, could be 45 seconds. And you can cut it out and put it on your social media. So you get, it's almost like you've got the, it's almost like you've got the full pizza. I'm terrible with analogies, aren't I? You've probably sussed that by now. You've got the full pizza. You can slice it up and give different slices to different people in different scenarios or different context. So, yeah, stick with me. We've not got too long to go. Got 10 minutes to go. It's a marathon. Are we still in? Just. It's a long time to be listening to me droning on. Trust me. Right. So, solo recordings. This is a client of mine or of ours, Movie Escape. This is another escape room operation in Stockport. And this is how you can use video in a slightly more advertising way, but in a slightly more interesting way.
Now, according to research, 78% of people are disappointed with the presents they receive for birthdays and Christmas. And it's because they're ungrateful. But why not gift the ultimate thrill of Moviescape? You know they'll thank you. If they ever get out. Available now from moviescape.co.uk.
So that is obviously more advertising in the sense it's advertising gift vouchers, but it's more interesting. I don't know if you recognize this guy. This guy's was in Harry Potter and various other bits and bats, apparently. So I'm told. But you see, you can do things, just make it a bit more interesting. As I said before, a bit more compelling, bit more interesting, bit more attention grabbing, or whatever it might be. So that's an example of so the other example of solo recordings is where you do a piece to camera. And what's very popular with those is the top tips. So it might be, hi, I'm Phil Croshaw. Great, very warm welcome. I just wanted to give you the top 5 reasons people don't do video and audio recording. And it's called the 5 phobias. Number 1, scopophobia. So you're actually you're engaging with people through the lens of your camera. Yeah. And that again can be 1 minute, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, but you're going out there, you're being seen and you're being heard. Voiceover slides. I'm going to zip through some of these now because of time constraints, but voiceover slides is where, in a way, what I'm doing now, where you talk over slides, which is a way of not being seen. You still have to get over your phonophobia, fear of your own voice, but you don't have to be seen on camera if you don't wish. So here, very, very quickly, is a quick clip of an example of voiceover slides.
So what we need to do and what we're suggesting you do is to incentivize and create an area on your homepage that starts capturing information. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to start building a list of people. Because if someone comes through to your site and they're about to leave, but they say it's a builder's merchant, they're about to leave and they come through and they can... So...
Okay, now, what I want to mention about that is that this is something you can really think about if you want to, this thing about standing out we've been talking about a lot. If you can use that as a way of supporting a proposal into a client. So imagine that you put a proposal into a client, if it's business to business in this case usually. Imagine if you send them a video talking over some of the key points in the proposal. That is going to stand out a mile. We've used this a number of times over the years with bigger clients, and it's not failed once. That's the truth. And the reason is that they appreciate, first of all, that you've put extra effort in. You've bothered to make your proposal different. And what you're doing is you're saying, you'll notice on page 4 that we talk about X. Just wanted to clarify what we mean by that. You'll notice on page 7, we've talked about X, Y, Z. This is what we mean by that. And this is a really important point we want to make. So you're basically adding a video to the proposal that you've put in on paper. That makes sense. Now, definitely recommend you look at that, because it will promise you, it will make you stand out a mile. Because most businesses, to term a northern phrase, can't be arsed, basically, doing it. They can't. So you're going to stand out a mile, and people will respect the fact you've put that extra bit of effort in. Live streams is another one. You can see we've got plenty of options, which is probably freaking most people out by now, because more options sometimes means more thought. Live stream is what it says on the tin. It's about just live streaming. I'm not going to show this because of time, but we did something here. This is called the Live Streamers Association. We did 31 days of live streaming in August. So every single day we did a live stream, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, for every single day in August. And there was 2 reasons for it. One was to create a bit of momentum and create a bit of buzz. People started to come in. It was amazing how the numbers started to increase as people started to see it. It was very much solo recording. So I was talking to camera, but 60 to 70% of it was video interviewees talking about their story, their business journey, etc., etc., etc. And it created a bit more jeopardy, because when you do a live stream, it's amazing how different you feel when you click in the button versus recording, because basically there's nowhere to hide. So you certainly feel more alive, and it won't be for everybody. In fact, the vast majority of people will not want to do it. But if you can find that confidence, or even if you're in a bigger company and you've got people in your company that are a bit more live wire or a little bit more extrovert, all that kind of thing, then that's a good way of being different. Again, being different. And I don't know if you know this, but when you do a live stream on Facebook and YouTube, it stays there as a recorded video straight after. So even if people don't come into it as a live stream, people can still access that content. As soon as it's finished live, it will stay there as a recorded video. Okay. Quizzes is another one, which I won't, as I say, I won't bother going into now because I'm conscious of time constraints. Webinars. This is an example of a webinar, so don't really need to say too much about that. Again, these things are becoming much more accessible and much more available. So webinars is another content type that you can play around with. Outside broadcasts, make it a bit more interesting, go outside. So you saw me in the graveyard there, a little bit different. And just think about things you can do. So you can do a vlog, you can be walking around your back garden, you can be walking around, as I say, a factory would be, as I mentioned earlier, could be an outside broadcast, or doing things in more interesting locations. That's the point, really. Animation, again, as I mentioned earlier, you can get lots of different, animations done now through something called Fiverr, which is Fiverr, double R at the end. And Fiverr is something that basically allows global companies to quote you costs for doing animations. So if you want to do something a bit more fun or a bit more quirky, then you can get them done for a fraction of the cost that they used to be done, because a lot of people in India, Philippines, those sorts of places, the Far East, they will be able to do them really high quality without anywhere near the same cost, which makes them all very accessible, should that be something you choose. And then, of course, there's your own show. So you can have your own show, get a bit cocky. I'm not going to play it, but this is one that I do with a lady called Taz Thornton, and we call it Pink Hair, Pink Head. I'll let you guess which is which. Taz has got pink hair, and obviously I've got a pink head. And what we do is every month we do an episode of Pink Hair, Pink Head, where we discuss a particular topic, and then we make it available for people to watch, where we're discussing and debating things usually around personal development, learning and development, confidence, all those sorts of topics and that kind of thing. Okay, how are we doing for time? I think we're about 1 o'clock, bang on the nail. Okay, so tons of stuff there. Hopefully 1 or 2 things in the basket, 1 or 2 things left on the shelf. Maybe the live stream is for another day, or maybe you can't wait to go on live stream, or something in between.